It almost sounds like a eulogy, so thank you. It's a very kind introduction. The topic of today's talk is the anatomy of entrepreneurship, or entrepreneur. And when we planned this discussion, I asked Joe, what do you want me to talk about? And we agreed that probably I will not go into any deep theoretical discussion, but I will try to bring to life my experience as an entrepreneur and take you through my background and try to make an example and maybe some conclusions on how one becomes an entrepreneur. You know, by now you probably wonder about my New England accent. And Joe mentioned in his introduction that I was born and raised in the former Soviet Union. In 1976, I was lucky to immigrate to the United States, and I always say that my luck was in misfortune of the former Soviet Union. And in 1974-1976 time frame, Soviet Union had major problems with crops. They didn't have enough bread. They needed some support from United States. And Phil Friedman was exchanged for grain. And when I make the statement, usually the question is inevitably, how much grain did they get for you? But based on the need of Russia at the time of subsidies and support for from United States, part of negotiation was that Russia agreed to allow about 70,000 people to immigrate to the United States. Now, my motivation to leave United States was not necessarily economic reasons. My motivation was religious freedom to live in a free society. While I was educated in the Soviet Union, had a degree in economics and finance, had an engineering degree, had a fairly good position in the system. I will tell you that by age of 20, I had a managerial position in a military establishment, military plant, where we manufactured electronic equipment for submarines and Air Force. Temperature control, pressure control equipment. And here I was, 20 years old, managing about 400 people, which was quite unusual in the Soviet Union. But I started working at age 16. And by age 20, I guess I earned the respect, and I was entrusted to run a department, fairly large department of 400 people. So the environment was very interesting. I enjoyed what I was doing. But somewhere around age 23, I was anxious to grow, and I was anxious to expand my horizons. And I made a mental note at the time, and I always will remember, I looked at the president of the company, the director of this establishment, and from the sidelines, I saw the mistakes being made by the management of the company. I saw mismanagement. I saw that we did the 30-day plan in the last 5 days of the month. I saw that a lot of things were not going the right way. And I remember saying to myself that I think that I can do this job, or maybe one day I will be able to run a company like this. And it wasn't bravado, it wasn't something that I just felt that I want to try to accomplish something bigger than I was doing. So fast forward, in 1976, I left the Soviet Union, came to the United States, and I had to start all over again. Had a good education from the Soviet Union, meant nothing here. I thought I spoke English, but I didn't. The problem was, the tragedy was, that I didn't realize how much I didn't. I went back to school. And at that time, in fact, NYU was running a special program for Eastern European professionals. And if you had the equivalent of a master's degree, in 6 months, they trained you about 5 hours every day English, and I choose data processing because IT at that time was called data processing. And I remember my wife decided to take accounting in the same program. And I was sitting in the back of the class reading the help wanted section of New York Times because I had no intention to be a programmer. I had no interest in the field, and I was looking for a job. But by accident, I came across a very small ad. And the ad was basically someone was looking for a beginner programmer. So since I didn't have too many options, I picked up the phone and I called. And I called to ask for an appointment. No, the principal wasn't there. They took the message. And much to my surprise, he called me back. And what he thought I was calling about, he thought it's a potential customer. He didn't realize that I'm looking for a job. And when I told him that I'm responding to the end in my broken English, he was ready to hang up on me. And I begged him to listen to my story. And after I explained to him my background and what I am looking for, he said, okay, I will call you back. Now, I was very new to the country. I didn't know what I call you back meant. And the next 4 days, I didn't move from the phone. I was waiting for this call to come back. 4 days later, much to my surprise again, on Sunday morning, I get a call. And this fellow invites me. He asked me where I live. I lived in Brooklyn on Ocean Parkway. He said, it's interesting. I live not far. Can you see me? I said, when? He said, how long will it take you? I live on Ocean Parkway, Avenue X. I said, 15 minutes. I didn't have a car. I didn't realize the distance. I was jogging to this appointment. He gave me an interview, and the interview was not about my technical skills, not about my programming skills. He wanted to know my background. He offered me a job. And I remember the excitement, the happiness. I landed my first job in the United States. Didn't pay much, but it was a start. I came home, and my wife, we had a calendar. And I took the back of the calendar, and I put down the date, and I put down the salary I was offered, and I said to my wife, let's watch it. I will do better, but this is a start. And we had a tradition every year. When I got a raise, I put another mark in this book just to track my progress in the country. Why I'm telling you all of this? I want you to know that when you come to this country, like I did, with $500 in my pocket, and the first check I had to write was for $480. Well, my apartment was $240 a month and 1 month's deposit. So it took care of $480 out of my $500. And I had $20 in my pocket. You start thinking very quickly because it's a matter of survival. You need to feed your family, and you need to do something. So I will not bore you about every step in my career, but in 2.5 years, I ended up landing a job in a major manufacturing company. It was a apparel manufacturer, 3,000 employees, factories in the United States, in Georgia and Virginia. I started as a systems analyst, and then I became head of the department, and I ran the IT department for several years. And as luck would have it, the company bought the second interactive online computer. You're too young to remember the System 38, which was a revolutionary online system from IBM. It was a second such machine from IBM in the city of New York. And we bought a software product from a company in California called ACS. And after a year and a half of installation and hard work, the system was working perfectly. IBM used the account as a showcase account. The software vendor was bringing in a lot of potential customers, and I was spending a lot of time giving out free advice. And one morning I woke up and I said to myself, if people travel from all over the country, and some people internationally, to listen and seek my advice, it must be a business here. So literally a 4-page business plan, I put it together and went to see the ownership of the company. And I remember that morning when I was leaving home, my wife was absolutely convinced that I'm making the biggest mistake and I will be back home unemployed and the company will throw me out and I will be fired. But the proposal that I made to the ownership of the company was very simple, and it was the very first outsourcing deal I ever did. I didn't realize at the time that I'm doing outsourcing. The proposal was if they would allow me to take the 5 programmers that worked for me in my department, and by the way, if they would agree to become my first customer, I would open doors across the street and I would cut their cost in half, but commit to deliver same high quality service they got accustomed to. While I expected that they will react very negatively to this proposal, that they are not going to like it, much to my surprise they did. And the reason they liked the proposal was that the offer was to cut their cost in half, obviously was very attractive. And number 2, they believed that Phil can probably build a business. And they wanted to be partners. Now, here I was. I didn't have too many options. If they wouldn't agree, I couldn't take my stuff with me. This was not, it was not a capital-intensive business I was starting. I was starting a services business. But I agreed. Took me 3 years to pay them out, and I paid them very handsomely to sell their 30% of the business, and this is where I started growing CGS. So CGS today is an international company, close to 5,000 employees. We operate any given day in 35, 40 countries around the globe, and we are very diversified in what we do. We we have a software group, we have a lot of proprietary IP, we do a lot of training, we do instructor-led training, and we are one of the largest training companies with 125 full-time instructors. We have an e-learning group in Canada that develops the most complicated e-learning offerings. We do a lot of professional services, consulting, and then we do a lot of BPO, ITO. We have 20 offices, and we operate in North America, Latin America, in Central Europe, and Asia. Now, the topic of today's discussion is entrepreneurship. And that's where I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about entrepreneurship. I'm sure that many of you sitting here either started or been in your own business or planning to be in your business. And while I believe that the best learning and the best experience one's get by making his own mistakes, sometimes you can learn from mistakes made by others. And I want to talk about those topics. I'm a big believer that to be an entrepreneur, you have to have something inside you. The truth of the matter is, to run today a company, you need a lot of knowledge. You have to know business law. You need to know labor law. You need to understand accounting. You need to understand human relations. You need to really react to what's happening in the world. And people who are not prepared and sometimes start businesses without proper base, proper education, they fail unless they learn very quickly on the job. And it's very hard to learn on the job if you don't have the proper background. But I also see a lot of people starting a business and try to become entrepreneurs because they have this understanding that they can get rich very quickly. You know, I will go in my business and, you know, I believe it's the wrong motivation to be in business. If you start with the assumption that you will start a business and you will overnight become very wealthy and you're doing it only because of the money motivation, it's not going to work, in my opinion. You have to love what you do. And I will tell you, I am almost, in 2 years, I will be celebrating, if I can say it, call it celebration, 50 years of my work career. I started working at age 16. I never had a boring day in my life. I wake up 6 o'clock in the morning. I never had an alarm clock in my house. And I'm anxious to go to work. And for those of you who don't like what you do, or you're doing it only because you have to earn a living, I don't envy you. I strongly recommend that whatever career you choose, whatever business you get involved with, one of the requirements should be you have to love what you do. Success will come, money will come, but it will be a byproduct of your work and your love work, because without loving what you do, I think it's not going to succeed. In business, in my opinion, you have to be very careful how you expand and how you grow your business. Over the years, we grew organically and we grew by acquisitions. And I tell you that many times you have to control your appetite and you have to be very careful on how do you expand your business. CGS acquired over the past 28 years 8 companies. 7 acquisitions we did were very successful. 1 was a failure. And I will tell you that looking back and how we structured the deal and how we decided to do the deal, I could have predicted that this failed acquisition would not work. And it was a gut feel. An entrepreneur usually has to trust his gut feel. I knew that something about this deal didn't feel good. The numbers looked good. The reasoning was good. But I had people convincing me that we should do the deal. While internally I felt that this deal doesn't make sense. Fast forward, we struggled with this company we acquired for 3.5 years, and at the end we had to let it go and we dissolved it. But it was an expensive learning curve, right? I did something that didn't feel right, and I should have not done this deal, and I knew that I'm making a mistake the minute I was signing this contract to buy the company. So it's very important to trust your instinct. The other very important thing that you learn as an entrepreneur, and it comes with time. You learn that you can't do everything yourself. When I started the business 28 years ago, I was full of energy, and I was absolutely convinced that it's nothing that I cannot do. I would make every decision in the company. I would do all the hiring. I would run every piece of business. Now, 28 years later, I will tell you that that's true to a certain extent. At a certain point of development of your company, of your business, you have to accept the truth. You cannot do everything yourself. You have to hire smart people who can support you, who you can trust, and who can take over the burden, because otherwise the company will reach a certain plateau and will start going backwards. Never be afraid to hire people smarter than you, because they will make you look great. Good people is the secret of every company. If you're trying to do everything by yourself and you're saying that you can accomplish everything yourself, you are kidding yourself to a certain point. Now, I am not implying that as a leader, as a manager, as an owner of the company, you shouldn't know what's happening in the company. Up till today, I'm very anal about knowing what's happening in the company. I want every week I get a weekly report. Every week I get a sales report. I get an operations report. Without exception, in 28 years, I never missed a Monday morning meeting where we review every piece of business, every account in the company. That allows me to keep my hands on the pulse of the company. But at the end of the day, I delegate, I trust people, and I want people to have responsibilities. And in our case, every division head has full P&L responsibility. If I can give you one more piece of advice, is that no matter what business you're in, no matter how big is your business, never forget that the biggest challenge and the biggest asset that you have is people. We are a technology company, but only about 10, maybe 15% of my time is taken up with technology issues. It's a lot of people in the company who are much smarter than me, more technologically advanced than me, who can move the technology forward. But the people's part is the most important part of any business. The minute you forget that it's the people who make the company great, you start moving forward. So always have the respect for the people who work for you. And no matter if it's a clerk in the mailroom or SVP in the company, they all need attention. And sometimes, and this is very important for those of us who are CEOs or C-level executives, a little misstep where you walk by an employee and you don't say hello, or you don't shake hands, or you don't smile at him, is misinterpreted. You may have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you may not think about it. But believe me, this employee who just passed you and looked at you and you didn't respond to with a hello or didn't shake his hand, he is misinterpreting. He's saying that you may be not caring. And caring about the people is what makes us successful. So this is something that you have to, if you don't know this, you have to learn. Because if not, it's going to bite you. Very important. At CGS, at my company, we believe that the world is one place today. Back in 1985, I was on a panel discussing outsourcing in the United States. And if you will Google Phil Friedman, I'm sure you will find still online my position where I stated unequivocally that we need to keep jobs in the United States. And I made a statement that was picked up by every union and was all over, where I said that once those jobs leave the United States, they will never come back. Now, fast forward, we're in the year 2012. And about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I started to realize that taking this approach of being only US-centric will not really allow my company to grow. Part of it was that the global market, my global customers, wanted delivery of the same quality, consistent service around the globe. And you can't do everything from United States. If your customer is in India, your customer is in Europe, you need to provide local services. So we started expanding internationally. Another major factor in this whole debacle is that in the United States, unfortunately, we cannot find today the skills we need to grow our business. So I had a side discussion with Joe, and my observation is that we're spending a lot of money on education in the United States, but the product that's coming out of our high schools today is not necessarily up to par. In the world, I think we are 24th in reading, and we are 36th in math, and we are spending more than any other country in the world on primary education. So when you prepare your business, and as the business will start growing, I think you will be also faced with the same dilemma I was faced. While internally, and I felt very strongly about, I didn't want to take jobs outside of the United States. I was forced to do it because my customers demanded global support, and I couldn't find the resources in the United States. When you go internationally, obviously you have a whole other number of challenges you have to deal with. Local laws, local labor regulations, local customs, employees speaking, multiple languages, and you have to adapt, and the cultural differences. But it comes with the territory. You have to learn how to deal with it. You have to make sure that you understand. I will tell you one thing we did, and I am very proud of it. We never acquired a company, or we never opened the office in a foreign country where we installed American management. we always hire local management. We certainly try to embrace them. We try to help them to understand how we do business. We share with them best practices, but we never force them to report to an American manager, because I know that it would probably backfire. That's not how we do business. Local management, we learn from them, and hopefully they learn from the U.S. management team. So I think I'm close to my allotted time. I will tell you, those of you who are entrepreneurs already, and if you have your own businesses, you probably can relate to what I am describing. It's not a better feeling than work for yourself, be in charge of your own destiny. I make my board of directors decisions 6 o'clock in the shower, and that's something to be said for that. But it is sometimes, it's very lonely at the top. Okay, you make the decisions. And I always feel that not only I am responsible for the 5,000 employees, I am responsible for 5,000 families that work for us. And my mistakes, my missteps can affect those 5,000 families. So the burden is a very heavy burden. And like I said, the best decisions sometimes you make 3 o'clock in the morning because you can't sleep. And you wake up and you think about the problems, but you go into work next morning and you have a solution because it's no one else you can turn to. At the end of the day, you have to make the decision. So I will conclude by saying that any one of you who has the fire in the belly, who is not looking for a quick buck, but who is looking for a commitment, and this is a labor of love to build a business, okay? Go for it. Go for it. Don't be afraid of failure, because failure is part of being an entrepreneur. The rewards are great. The satisfaction is great, but it's a big step to make a decision to leave a comfortable, secure job, which doesn't exist anymore, and go into your business. So let me stop here and open up for questions if you have any. Thank you. If you can avoid partners, avoid partners. But that's Phil Friedman, my own. Look, I started with partners, as I described, only because I didn't have a choice. But the truth of the matter is, I saw a lot of companies were very successful, where people started with partners. I, for one, enjoy making my own decisions and not to consult with anyone, but it doesn't mean that I am right. Yes? I described that when I started the company, the whole idea was to provide services around this particular product that we installed. It was a company in California. We did a lot of services around this product. And we took advantage of the fact that the company didn't have local presence. They sold the software, but they didn't really support the customer. I will tell you little side stories that maybe give you some perspective of this. I was in business literally 6 months when I got a call from the president of Calvin Klein, a fellow by the name Joel Newman was the president. I didn't know who he is, but when someone tells me I am president of Calvin Klein, would like to invite you for breakfast, he got my attention. The following morning, 7 o'clock, I had breakfast with the president of Calvin Klein. And 15 minutes into the discussion, he said to me, look, we bought this product, same product you installed and the same product you're supporting. I would like you to take over the IT at Calvin Klein. We will outsource the whole thing to you, $3 million a year, and I want you to run my IT. You're 6 months in business. You just started. I hardly had 7, 8 employees at the time. And was overwhelmed. So I said to him, look, I'm very honored. I need 48 hours to get back to you. I will tell you that 48 hours I didn't sleep, I didn't eat. I was thinking. 48 hours later, I came back and I said, Joel, really appreciate the offer, but I have to decline. He almost fell off the chair. And my reasoning was that if I would accept the job, I would be back to where I started. I would become a department of Calvin Klein. That would be my only client. They would absorb every employee I had, and I would be back to it was a lucrative contract. I could have made a lot of money. I said no, but I offered the solution. I said, what I would like to propose, for the next 6 months, I will come in and I help you to get this thing back to normal. I will help you to hire your own people. And then I will depart. And he respected my honesty, because in many instances people would jump to get, 3-year, $3 million a year. I said no. We did work at Calvin Klein for 10 years. We did millions of dollars of business, and it was based on the fact that I had the guts to say no to a contract. And this is another very important lesson if you're in business. Many times you have to be able to say no. The contract doesn't smell right, the contract is not looking good, or your gut tells you that it's not a job you have to take on. And I tell you, the hardest thing for an entrepreneur to do, to say no to a piece of business. It's very hard to say no. So going back to your scale, we scaled based on opportunities. We bought companies that have been strategic to our growth. We always looked at where this acquisition will put us in the next growth level. And as we started growing, we've been able to attract more capable management. So if you don't have the infrastructure and you don't have the people who will be able to support the growth, don't do it. Yes, sir.
You said that you get to a point where you have to get the burden off to other creative people, and they can move the business forward because they're technologically advanced in certain areas. Obviously, you do manage it, but how do you approach managing a group that is that technologically advanced, let's say it that way, and still be able to keep them focused on what your mission is?
So 3 o'clock this afternoon, I had a technical meeting with my staff, okay, that came in to propose a major expenditure, a major investment in technology. And we had, 6, 7 people around the table. while I probably didn't know in intimate detail every technological solution they proposed, I challenged every single one of those. And by challenging, I learned. And by the way, when you challenge, people open up and they start talking about things that they don't necessarily put on a PowerPoint. So I got educated. And by the time I was leaving for this meeting, I had a clear understanding what they're proposing, why they're proposing. So on 2-3 items, I sent them back to the drawing board to come back and do a little bit more in-depth investigation. 2 things I approved on the spot. And I got educated, and I think they got educated in the process. So you don't need, as a head of the company, to know every little minute detail. But if you ask the right questions, people will tell you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Interested in process management. So as your company is expanding and taking on more employees and revenue is growing, is there, can you remember along the way where you had to make major process changes or restructuring your company? And is there a timeline where you can remember related perhaps revenue or employees?
The process improvement is a never-ending process. You constantly look for improvements, okay? And anytime an entrepreneur thinks that he reached the perfect solution and he reached the pinnacle, he starts going backwards. We constantly review our processes and tell you no matter how long you're doing it, you always will find ways to improve the process. Now, to tell you that it happened on January 3rd in year 1992, I can't, because we never stopped doing this review. Now, sometimes it comes a point you have to make decisions to discontinue a piece of business because it doesn't make sense, or add additional resources to a business because you believe it has potential, but it's a constantly evolving process. I cannot tell you that we had a date where we did a review and Anything else? Yes, sir.
I want to know how the management started in the 80s and now in the future. I mean, how do you compare? How do you differentiate? What do you do in the future? I mean, you in the past, right, started to now, essentially, and the next 20 years, how is that changes the management style?
It's a very good question. I consider myself an old-timer, if I may. My management style is the traditional management style. I like to see people around me. I believe in building a team in the office. I believe in a lot of interaction between the people. The reality is that, especially in our field, a lot of people work today from home. It's generally accepted that people will work in remote offices. You don't see them as they work at home. If I would be able to help it, I want my people next to me. But the reality is you have to learn how to trust people working remotely, how to establish an environment where they interact. And that takes a very different skill. And especially in technology fields that we operate in, you deal with a lot of young, very bright kids out of school. They have their ideas. They very convinced in that what they're doing is, absolutely correct. And you need to manage them differently than a 55, 60 years old guy who spent 30 years in the industry and who saw the evolution of the industry. Those guys are born with a computer in their lab. So it's a very different mentality, and you have to adjust. It's not one formula for all. Yes, sir. I will tell you, it's a lot of gray hair. Okay, I believe in what I do. I love what I do. And like I said, over the years, I went through evolution. I started to understand that hiring and bringing on board a team of bright people and letting go. And the worst thing for an entrepreneur where he has to let go, where you start delegating and you don't have full control, at least you think you don't have full control of the business, and you have to entrust someone with a $50, $60, $100 million piece of business. And you say, you know, it's yours. And I will tell you, we run the company as a publicly held company. We go through a formal budget process. The budget is bottoms up. The business units develop the budget. They present to the executive committee. We review, we challenge, we agree. Once we accepted the budget is yours. And then it's my job to make sure that I pull the right strings and make sure that it's being delivered. I wanted to mention one more thing, if I may, that I believe is very important for a culture of any company. And I take a lot of pride that at CGS, we don't have politics. Every time I see the ugly head of politicking raises, I cut it off. I don't believe that anyone in my company should get ahead at the expense of someone else. So collaboration, working jointly, it's one team, one objective. We communicate very openly. You know, our financial performance is known to our top management, despite the fact that we are a privately held company. If we do something well, we celebrate together. If we failed in something, it's everyone's problem. It's not a Phil Friedman problem. It's our management problem. And I think that people know, and especially people coming in who worked for large companies where politics is a routine thing, where people backstabbing. We don't have it in our company. And as long as I will be there, it's not going to happen. We believe that everyone works as a team. If I see someone is complaining about someone else and you know, for the wrong reason, it's not acceptable.
With that, why don't we stop the formal part of the evening, and I'd like to invite everyone to join a reception. We can talk one-to-one, and Phil will be here for a while, and I invite you to enjoy the food and the conversation one-to-one. Phil,
Thank you very much.
I really want to thank Phil for coming here. I met Phil probably now almost a year ago, and we've been speaking over that time period, and he has taught me a lot, and I thank him for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.